Is that my cue? I guess that's my cue. Welcome, everybody.
Didn't do it backwards.
We didn't, yeah, 1, 2, start.
So where's the end point?
But this is not Into the Rift. Welcome, everybody, CLBC to China Talk. My name is Daniel C. Pedregos. I'm obviously not Razzleplasm. Unfortunately, he is not available today, so I'm subbing in for him. And with me, I guess, as always for this show, I'm the newbie here, is going to be Michael Drexen-Leher, Emily Rand, and Kelsey Moser. And really happy to be here, really excited to talk about China. Now, LPL, 24 games a week, kind of a foreign scene to me, but luckily I'm somewhat prepared. And the first team we're going to be talking about tonight, whose name I already forgot how to pronounce, so bear with me. Qiao Gu.
Yay!
You got it.
Hey, you got it.
Gold star. Yes.
Qiao Gu. Okay, so my experience with Qiao Gu so far has been this. I'm watching Twitter for LPL tweets while I'm prepping for LJL casts, and I see Frost tweet out that, okay, IG, you're no longer my favorite. You're not aggressive enough. You're not doing, like, you're not enough for me anymore, because apparently Qiao Gu is nuts, going ham all the time. And apparently a large part of that is Swift. Now, I don't know a whole lot about Swift, but Emily, I think you do. Enlighten me. Who is Swift?
Okay, so Swift started, I don't know if you know kind of the running joke with the Zenix farm system. So Zenix always scouts these players that are then poached by other, not really poached, but picked up by other teams. So he was on a
Kind
team
of like
with
Copenhagen Wolves.
a bit, yeah.
You gotta have farm teams.
I know, right?
Like a team to train them.
Yeah, so Zenix has been like that for a while, and this team had Coco, Arrow, and Peekaboo on it as well. And Swift was kind of this very talented up-and-coming jungler. He was known for a lot of early aggression, creative pathing really early. And when CJ Frost was kind of going through their rebuilding year, Lyra, who is currently on Anarchy now, and he had a stint in China on OMG2, they kicked him for Swift. And so Swift joined the team in, I think, March of last year. And he was kind of supposed to usher in this, new golden age for Frost, where, everyone was kind of oh, Frost has all these pieces, and space was kind of singled out as the... This is when the term space prison kind of started coming into fashion. And in Champion Spring, Swift made a lot of noise, some of it good, some of it bad. He was kind of known for being really mechanically gifted, very, very mechanically gifted, very aggressive, but he would always go in and die. He would overcommit and die. And that was kind of his issue. If he didn't have the rest of the team there, obviously his deaths were kind of in vain. They went into Champion Spring, and they made it into playoffs. They played against Samsung Blue, and they had a really strong first game. And then after that, they kind of fell apart. Blue managed to come back in a lot of their mid and late games, even when CJ would get off to an early start. And so everyone was kind of looking at this team, and they were like, okay, well, Swift has figured it out. The team's finally clicking. We're good to go. Champion Summer 2014 comes around. I don't know if anyone remembers, but guess which organization had neither team in the playoffs? Oh, it was CJ. And CJ actually lost to, what happened was they were put in a group with Samsung White and SKTS, and they lost to I think, White. And that was what made the difference. They lost to White, and then they tied with S. And S had tied with White. So it was kind of this huge disappointment.
How could CJ be a good team if we're taught to believe that SK Telecom T1S was such garbage in this period?
Oh, man.
Wow. Wow, Kelsey, wow.
Hold on. Yeah,
that's
SKT1S
the perception. It's oh my gosh, SKT1S won champions, but then they were actually not that bad. I don't know.
Okay, so here's my theory on why people hate S.
They were boring. That's why.
Okay, not only were they boring, Monty, love Monty to death. very good about staying non-biased on cast, but that guy hates Ziggs and hates the easy hoon passive playstyle more than anybody I know. And I think it's seeped in there towards the end of the season where they were winning with these like passive mid laners. So I think it's just kind of like that's the impression because they were good at what they did, but like you said, what they did was ridiculously boring. And...
Yeah, not as interesting to watch. Anyway, so Swift's role in CJ, he was just again like really aggressive early. And for whatever reason, it never clicked. Like he was seen as this like still like a very strong, very up and coming talent. Like going into the next season, I think there was all the roster rumors about where he was going to end up, et cetera, and people thought he was going to stay in Korea. They were like, oh man, Swift will be like on the top of junglers, right? And then because of all the talent that they knew was leaving, but then he left as well, and ended up on Qiao Gu. And Kelsey, this is going to transition.
In Korea, this is pretty much a dumpster. Yeah, I don't know.
Hey, Score. But anyway,
like, I'm sorry. If Score is like one of your best junglers and Ambition, I mean, that's okay.
Oh god. Okay. Well, okay. So
yeah.
here's
so here the basics is Swift is very talented, but he's known for being really aggressive. Like aggressive to the point where he goes in and he dies instead of helping out his lanes to snowball their advantage, and that was a lot of the problem that he had on CJ Entis.
Would you say that that's still a problem on Qiao Gu? And earlier you talked about him being this like clever, innovative as far as jungle pathing goes. Do you think he's retained those traits on Qiao Gu, or do you think those have kind of like fallen away and he's kind of changed his identity a little bit?
No, I mean, I think he still looks like really good. I was going to transition this into Kelsey talking about this. I know she has like a ton of LSPL stats on him, but that basically it's some similar. It's a bit similar where like any issues he does have with the team is because he overcommits and then dies. But he's still like very like the way I see Qiao Gu, I still don't see them as like a ridiculously I guess comprehensive isn't the right word, but like a really like super strategic team, right? But they are good at getting like kind of like the wombo combo team fights, and they have really strong laners, and they have Swift.
They like to pull the trigger. They're very good at pulling the trigger.
Yeah, Qiao reminds me a lot of old OMG,
really
to be honest.
And the thing about Qiao Gu is that they'll like always go in, almost to the point where you can kind of think of them as a Starhorn Royal Club with that brings like more frontline and a better like approach to early game jungle pathing, because Swift is so creative in terms of where he wants to go in the early game and where he wants to gank. But he'll take like all of the kills. So we saw in Qiao Gu, he got 100 kills over the course of like 23 games, which doesn't sound that much, but he got more kills than both the top lane and the combined total of the mid laner kills. So he ended up getting like all the kills on the top side of the map. TnT had most of the kills overall, TnT the AD carry. The other thing is that he actually had the most deaths of anyone on Qiao Gu. You know how Moore is TCT, and Moore has always been famous for dying a lot? He had 2 more deaths than Moore did. Moore had 74 deaths in 23 games, and Swift had 76. So that was... So you think about these numbers in the 23 games that they play, and they actually weren't even at the top of the kill and assist and KDA standings for LSPL, despite the fact that they did end up taking the entire league, and they won the entire league, and they only lost, I think, a total of 5 games of those 23. So it's interesting that that was kind of their stat line, and that was their approach, is just always go in. And I actually think that, weirdly, the jungle meta, despite the fact that the tanky jungle meta, despite the fact that Swift likes to play these carries, like he's best known for his Kazakhs probably in Korea, and then he played a lot of Nidalee. He played mostly Nidalee and LSPL, but because like he played those Swift squishy champions, he would like always go for the dive and always go in. But now that he plays Sejuani, you know, he can just get a lot of these early kills, and he's like an unkillable monster. And that's why I think Qiao Gu and LSPL, I didn't consider them good at team fighting. I considered them good at like the 1v1 outplay and snowballing from there. But now they look much better at team fighting, and I think it's because he is playing those front lines when he goes in. So
yeah, agreed.
I was just gonna say,
Go ahead, Emily. No, you're fine.
I know.
No,
I was just gonna say he was a Lee Sin and a Lee's player too, and
Yeah.
a lot of the way he would set up team fights for CJ Entis would either go like really really good or really really bad, but he never had a problem going in on those champions and using like displacement and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's really decisive, and the thing is that you can actually see how close this is sometimes in some of the team fights that Qiao Gu chooses to engage, where like the extra, like Kelsey mentioned with the tank champions, like the extra few seconds of durability is like just enough time for his team to follow up and make it perfect, rather than like on other champions where like, you know, in the warrior meta he would get blown up immediately. And yeah, it's actually it is really refreshing to see how smart Swift is in the jungle. So it's not, I mean, it's nice in general that LPL is enhancing jungle talent across the board, but even like across most of these games, like Swift did a really good job at securing first blood. In the last set against OMG, he got first blood in both of the games in that set for his team. And yeah, it's really refreshing to see like a Chinese team go back to the old formula, but mix it up enough to the point where it works current day when there's when like teams are smarter and the vision's better and stuff like that. Because like yeah, back in the day, like OMG used to do this kind of thing and Starhorn used to do this kind of thing last year, but the jungle predictability was a lot like more readable. Like you could always tell that they were going to camp bottom lane or things like that. Like the pathing was always really obvious. So now you kind of have that old style mix in with a jungler that is really intelligent in the way that he approaches map control. And so it's almost unreadable, and then they transition that into solid team fights. But like as far as Qiao Gu's performance, I feel like it's really solid because you can see that they played against teams that aren't like on paper all the teams they played against are all really strong, but like contextually it's not quite the same because like you know they're set against EDG, like they were playing with Amazing J, EDG, and
they didn't play EDG. I don't think they played IG, LGD, and OMG.
Sorry, IG.
Yeah,
IG,
they played
yeah.
LGD without
IG, LG, and OMG, right? Okay, so these are all teams that are actually doing pretty well or have done really well. Like, but at the same time, like with their set against LGD, for instance, like LGD is notoriously different for playing like their regular split compared to their like their playoff game. And like this is like something that's really annoying in terms of like how teams are rated, especially in like LoL esports and stuff, is like I mentioned earlier in a chat that we had privately, like experimentation is like the Voldemort of like the channels in which we rate teams on LoL esports. Because like if you're just watching like Western regions, it's really easy to fall into the trap of like, oh well, experimentation isn't really an excuse, like it's all about winning, and you know you can't really just every time someone fails you can't really use that as an excuse. But like in a region like China where there's just so many, like an insane amount of games, like it's you know you can be a little bit more flexible with the term.
True in Korea,
you know?
too, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say honestly, like there's no way you can look at Korea this year and say that teams haven't been doing the same thing. Like SK Telecom did it all last split.
And LGD also wasn't playing with PYL for their Qiao Gu set, so...
Yeah. Right. That's what I mean. It's like on paper, Qiao Gu's wins are actually impressive because the teams they played against are really good. IG's the top of the standings. OMG is still doing fairly well. They have a positive win rate. And LGD is LGD, who got second in LPL, but like the context in which they won these games isn't quite as impressive as it would seem. It's still really good, but I want to give it time because like if we look at how Snake performed early last split too, we kind of made the same conclusions. And then teams like figured them out. I mean, it could be the same with QG. Like QG could legitimately just be really good, but at the same time, like people might be able to pick up on their over-aggression and play against those dives or be a little more ward-heavy and play safer against them, and as a result find that they're one-dimensional too. It might not be as easy as a read of Snake, but that is a possibility as well. The only wild card there is Swift's unpredictable jungling.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, even against Invictus Gaming, they have a good stylistic matchup, just because I feel like Invictus Gaming, and we'll talk about Invictus Gaming at the end of the episode more, but I feel like they rely on Zatai pulling a lot of pressure by just being really dumb. I don't
Zatai?
just like general kind of like a pawn on EDG type thing. And then they like Rookie and Kid will just like always outfarm like their lanes just very slowly, like small leads up to like 20 to like 60 or so CS, and then they'll just dominate team fights. But Qiao Gu won't let you do that because their jungler is always going to be trying to make something happen really early, trying to like dive you, trying to orchestrate all of these ganks, and that makes like that kind of, and force the early dragons, that makes that kind of game harder to execute.
Well, my concern with Qiao Gu is we talk about them, like people exposing them and finding them out, but they're just as much a victim of patch notes, it seems like, when we talk about Swift. And you talk about, like, he's not actually getting better when you guys talk about him. It's not that he's, like, smarter and less aggressive. It's that the meta is now trending towards tanky champions, powerful tanky champions, who, when they get these kills, become unkillable. And if, like, the meta shifts more towards Evelynn, back towards Warrior Jungle or something like that, it seems like Qiao Gu, just as easily as people figuring them out, could drop out very quickly because Swift will just start dying again.
They'll just throw away, like, they'll get massive leads because Swift's pathing is so good, but he is that double-edged sword, right? Where, like, he defines Qiao Gu's playstyle completely. Like, if he gets those early kills, and then he'll throw them away on overcommitting to team fights with squishier champions. And it's a little bit disappointing to see, but I think that right now they're doing really well. I think that also his tendency to take most of the kills from, like, the top side of the map is a big issue if he is going to die a lot, right? There's always, like, okay, you can have the guy who dies a lot, but then he's going to be a more selfless player. But if you have the same person, like, this was the problem with UZI early in Starhorn Royal Club's development. This was the problem with Jiangun and Young Glory. So, like, if your carry is going to be crazy like that, you need almost like the perfect follow-through. And I think that Qiao Gu is similar to WE in terms of, like, having the carry jungler, but Spirit is, like, better in almost every way. His teammates just suck so much more. Like, so Qiao Gu actually has pretty solid teammates. I've made in the past some comment about Doinmi having a weird champion pool, and I think he has, like, a limited champion pool that he's super good on, but he just has no idea how he wants to play yet. Like, in LSPL, he started playing for them late, so he only played 15 games with Qiao Gu, but he played 12 different champions during this time. So and then when you watch their games, he's not really a mid laner, he's like a support for the jungler. He follows Swift around and is like, okay, we're gonna get some kills.
I do think that kind of works out fairly favorably for the way they play, though, especially because V is usually a secondary carry role in that team. So, but I do kind of wish that there was, like, a way to see how Qiao Gu would operate with, like, Coco instead of Doinb in the mid lane or something like that.
And that was the big rumor, right? That because Doinb, there was that screenshot of a conversation Doinb was having. He was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna leave Qiao Gu," and he didn't realize his manager was in chat. And his manager was like, "That's okay. We don't care. We don't want you to." So the rumor was that they were going to get Coco, right? So that's why they didn't care, but Doinb ended up staying, so it's interesting.
Yep.
It would have been interesting to see Coco on that team.
Oh man, I have such mixed feelings about Coco, but I'm gonna stray from Coco and from Qiao Gu overall, since it seems like it's pretty much chalked up to this is the first couple of weeks we kind of have to wait and see if they continue to execute like it is for a lot of these teams. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
I really, like, I was like, why is their team fight suddenly looking so good? Because they used to say their team fighting is so bad, like, why is this happening? I was like, he's playing Sejuani every game. This makes a lot of sense.
and it's with LPL especially, and now LCK, you just can't jump the gun on, like, how teams are performing too early in the split. Like, the games in the first few weeks of LPL are always ridiculously silly. So
I am really, like, it is really cool to see them do well, because I think the fact that they are so willing to pull the trigger and they just go all in together shows, like, a high amount of synergy, and it's really interesting to watch.
It's also refreshing to see a new LPL team come into the scene with, like, such confidence when they haven't been in the LPL before. So, like, because we've seen teams like King in the past, like Old King, that would, like, execute really well in LPL, and then they'd just be too scared to do anything with a lead in LPL, and it just completely crushed them, and they look like a completely different team.
And of course the difference between Qiao Gu and King, for example, is that they're 3 players who have played in top leagues before. You've got TnT and TC2 have actually played together in LPL before, so...
And I think also just if we compare it to Snake, too, another team that came in like pretty successfully, it's not, their strategy isn't quite so linear and obvious. We're like scratching our head as to like why aren't people just banning Nunu Jarvan every game? Like people have proven that it works. Just why aren't they doing it? Why does this guy keep getting his Aerith? Like these guys actually have a strategy and they're executing well and they're playing well. It's not just like, well, why is no one camping Crystal? Like why is no one punishing Crystal for the stupid stuff he does? It does feel like they are somewhat like more intelligent and are actually have like earned this success, even if it is these first few weeks where it's harder to credit them with it because LPL is known for experimenting. But moving on. So the other there's three teams in this league that all have a very are very lacking, I would say, as far as identity goes. And for me, those teams are M3, RNG, and Unlimited Potential. And none of them have really wowed me yet. They don't really. It feels like as far as narrative and storyline goes, they're kind of just there, right? I wanted to know what your guys' thoughts were on these teams in general, and do you agree that they kind of lack an identity, or what are your thoughts?
Well, to some extent they do, but I think it's just overshadowed by the fact that there's just so much more interesting things going on in the LPL with the roster swaps of already established the organizations, as well as like new teams like Qiao Gu coming in and doing really well again, like Snake did last split. But I think the problem is that, yeah, they don't really jump off the page in the same way. Like RNG is literally just old king with like a little bit of extra flavor, I guess you could put it that way. I don't know.
Extra flavor.
Extra flavor.
Nice.
So like, I mean, I don't know. There's nothing really, yeah, they're just so, like, average. Like, everything's just so, like, okay, they're just there. Like you said, it's nothing overly special. Like, the only thing that's, like, really interesting in RNG's case is the fact that, like, the whole roster swap thing even happened, because it was just hilarious to think about. Like, oh, we're Star on Royal Club's not in LPL, but I got money. But, yeah, and Unlimited Potential just, like, isn't really doing too well either, so I don't know.
So, oh no, go ahead, Kelsey.
I was just gonna say, I think the thing about these teams is that you go in expecting a young adult novel and like this long journey over time where they develop and they find themselves and they become these new adults and learn how to operate within the world of LPL, and maybe some of them make it to the top and some of them realize that they just can't cut it, all this other like depressing storyline, but it's really just like nothing is literally happening.
Yeah.
They just sit there and they don't do anything. And that's kind of like what happened with Master 3 and King last split. Like, you expected something to happen, and then now this is their second shot, and I feel like I'm going to spend this entire split again expecting something to happen for them, and I'm not sure it will, so.
I think another problem in Unlimited Potential's case, especially for people that are like international viewers, is like there's no one that you can possibly care about on that team besides Heart if you don't watch much Chinese League of Legends. So
I was gonna say, hey, I love Amy. Like,
yeah. But
Speaking
Wow.
of junglers that overcommit. and
yeah,
fight.
seriously.
yeah,
So, I mean, okay, so when we look at these three teams in general, is it not fair to say that they could? I mean, I honestly have not gotten to watch too many of these games. So looking at these teams, from what you guys have seen, would you say that we could consider them experimenting as well in these first few weeks, or is it just like these teams have screwed around and done nothing all split before, and we're not willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, or is it like they're playing basic stuff, doing basic things, and it's just not interesting?
Like, I know
It's just average.
for Unlimited Potential's case, they only came together like during playoffs last LSBL split. Like, previously, they lost in the first round to Legend Dragon, and I did not expect them to make it out of the losers bracket. And I think if there's any, like, maybe it's just because I like them, so like I'll admit there's a huge bias there because I saw Amy like 2 seasons ago and like really loved him, and then watched him in LSPL. But I think they have the most like potential, like, I don't know, like avoid the obvious like pun or whatever there.
All right.
No CLG
Clear.
references.
No.
I will,
Hold
on.
I will literally
I just,
shoot you.
I'm going to sidetrack us for 2 seconds just to say how I've resisted. Unlimited Potential didn't take it down the CLG line. We talked earlier about teams that perform really well in the early season and then drop off. Didn't talk about CLG. That's all I want to say. I've resisted.
I guess one thing that you can say for Unlimited Potential is that, I mean, if we're talking about potential, I think their bot lane actually has a lot of potential, because I think Heart and Sketch are really solid when they, I mean, they're like kind of inconsistent, but they're really solid. Like, they had a really, what's that? I think it was against LGD, where they were playing like a really, really good Braum Urgot, and like they timed the ultimates really well and essentially just dominated team fights just from those two alone.
So when we talk about this bot lane developing, do you think it's
really good games this past week?
It's interesting to me that Hart is like so old, but his mechanics, I feel, have gotten better since he's come to China. So,
Started watching Street Fighter and stopped using excuses.
yeah.
Well,
He said he learned to, like, his advantage over other Koreans who didn't play on LSPL is that he quote unquote learned to love the game. I was like, are you serious? Right now?
He just said some like deep meditation, like I'll force myself to still enjoy this. I will
And
fuck
to
my
everyone
mind.
else, like it's Dade's retirement home, but Hart has like a second wind. Like
He's
that's
found
kind
his
of
heart.
ridiculous.
he's like that guy who worked all the time and never had any fun. Now he's finally retired and he's like free to like travel the world and enjoy the things he loves, like Braum Urgot lands apparently. So that's the question I wanted to ask. You talk about his
Oh,
mechanics getting
Braum
better.
was super good against Forest. I was like, wow, that is so smart. Like, when Wayless picked Forest and then he picked Braum into it, I was like, that is so smart. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe teams will stop like prioritizing Varus over like
Varus
80
mid.
other champions.
It's okay. It's okay. The second game, someone already banned it against LGD. They're done playing it.
So now Wayless is done.
Nah, they're banning it. Might have to find another random champion now.
So
man.
you talk about this bot lane getting better, and I'm curious on your opinions about. So we talk about Heart's mechanics actually improving, which is surprising to me because the thing I was going to ask is, Heart is such an old player. Generally, we see people mostly skill capped out at that point when we talk about mechanical skill. So are we just waiting for this bot lane to have like spent more time together, to have worked together longer, to kind of build up that communication strength and that synergy, or do you really think we can just like Heart's just getting better and we can expect him to continue to get better?
Well, I think when
I
we
think the
talk
prob-
about
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
no. Last time
I-
I went, you go.
I was just making a caveat that's saying like, okay, you could. That's kind of like, it's kind of a hard thing to discuss just because they're not really improving in a sandbox. Like other teams are also improving their bottom lanes, and there's already so many really good bottom lanes that I'm not entirely sure, especially 2 weeks in, if they will improve to be like a world class bottom lane, or if these are just like going to be little bursts of excellence. So that's where I'm at now. It's like it's too early to tell, but there's times where I'm like, okay, they seem relatively underwhelming, and then other times where I'm like, wow, they're actually like winning the team fights by themselves. And I'm wondering actually if sorry, my brain just stopped. Okay, if Sketch will end up playing more Ashe, because his Urgot was his most impressive champion to me so far, and I feel like he's a lot better playing like more like supportive or like team fight initiation role.
It's really surprising
Yeah.
to me because when Unlimited Potential, like initially in the split, I would say that their bottom lane was kind of weak. Like there were rumors that the Vici Gaming team, because UP used to be Vici Gaming Potential, Vici Gaming sister team. There were rumors that they were looking to unload their bottom lane because they were just not impressed with how well they were doing so far. But then towards the end, Sketch was sort of pitted as the primary carry in LSPL. He would play these Jinx games and just like go completely off. So it's interesting to me that coming into LPL, he's moved towards a more supportive style, playing Urgot, and I think Loong is playing more carries, and they aren't really like, I'm not super. I actually think Zhao Yang is significantly better than Punished. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
I wouldn't say significantly better, but definitely better. I mean, watching them in watching them in
on the Riot Games cast is kind of like, oh, Punished plays more assassins, but I don't.
no. I mean, I've always been kind
I
of
don't
down
think that's
on
true.
Apollo
I don't either.
because I always thought he was like the very obvious weakest point of that team when they were in LSPL. The thing I was gonna say about Hart and already said it, but like even within LSPL, their development was always kind of like very off and on throughout the season, and then they really started clicking during the playoffs. And then coming into LPL, it's been kind of the same, where they have like really, really high highs, and then sometimes Sketch will just like randomly misposition for no reason. So it's I think it's hard to say whether they're going to develop like a really strong bot lane.
Players like that, just for no random.
I mean,
games.
just like
I don't feel like playing the game correctly right now.
Yeah, like I don't really see it, because sometimes Sketch just like derps. Like, let's be honest, like he just like, oh, why are you there, Sketch? Like that makes no sense.
I mean, this is a conversation where we're talking about M3, which has is like the Dade retirement home, right? And we're talking about Sketch occasionally derping. It seems like, I mean, if these teams have something in common, it's random players that just don't consistently show up, and that's, I mean, for me, that's a little concerning at least.
It's interesting to me though that it's the only all-Korean bottom lane. Yeah,
So they do have that. Like there shouldn't be any like
Language.
general
Like,
communication between the two of them.
I always kind of thought about that. Like, why wouldn't you just import? Because a lot of people are importing like the jungle mid combos. So why don't you import like an entire bottom lane? So.
Because all the Korean ADCs are already. Well, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I like PYL. Anyway, so out of these.
I mean, that's the issue is like, why didn't VG Gaming get Mata and Imp instead of Dandy and Mata, right? So...
have you seen Vasily play?
He's a god.
Tristana.
Wow.
Tristana's on the way back in the meta. That's all
He's
I'm
not
saying.
even on the team anymore.
Yeah.
According to Reddit, he's on the LSPL team, which doesn't even exist. So.
He at least made his way into the LPL intro. That's all.
He's there in spirit every time we watch the LPL.
He's on the
start
bench.
up.
They didn't even play him.
Muscles.
They didn't even play him when they were like throwing Schwan and Pung in there. They were just like, nah, no
like
Vasily today.
Contributed more gym selfies than kills to that lineup.
I think the only one. I guess Doogie hasn't played, which I would think would be the perfect time for Doogie to play. So I guess my closing statement on Unlimited Potential is I feel like the thing that they have over the other two rosters, and maybe not at Master 3, like I'll leave a caveat on Master 3 and we talk about them a little bit more, but I think the advantage they have is Heart, is his experience, and the fact that Unlimited Potential has shown like comeback performances, ability to control objectives a little bit better than RNG, things like that because of the experience shot calling that he brings to the team. I think that they probably have a better chance of doing well than Master 3 or RNG in theory. Just because of that aspect. Even though I would say mechanically they're weaker than either of those other two teams.
So, I mean, so out of the three teams, you think Unlimited Potential will place the highest within LPL this season?
I actually think between the two that's true. Just because they're not ahead of RNG right now, but wait, actually, never mind. They both had sets against King. Never mind. I was trying to calculate the free points in my head, like between each team.
Yeah.
Just,
what about the WE matches?
Oh, yeah, there we go. That's true. That's true.
Well, M3
yeah,
with WE,
that's right.
so.
Yeah, M3 lost again to WE. But
so I just love that there's the pause for the free points calculation.
That's
what we're at.
I was rewatching the Master 3 versus. I was rewatching the WE versus Master 3 set today to like look at some of the stats and pull the data.
That was so stupid from both ends, honestly.
Oh my! The second game when Master 3 did the lane swap in WE, like by the end of the game, Aluka couldn't deal, like the team couldn't deal with lane swaps that Aluka was 160 CS behind fucking Looper. Looper, for fuck's sake!
And
like,
it was a game where Looper like dove Aluka and took like 95% damage from the tower and just died.
Yeah.
Like...
That was the first game. I was like, why did
so
you just
good.
do just
Oh my
like?
God.
And it's not. And they played the same champions both sets, so it's
Yeah.
In 1v1, Looper legitimately lost to Aluka, but they did the lane swap, and Aluka went 160 CS down.
They saved Looper
I
by
don't understand how this happens.
Oh, to the god Aluka.
Wait a second. Okay, hold on. Aluka beat
Looper, like, okay,
Darn.
I think it's more likely to say that Looper, more fair to say that Looper lost to Aluka because of that ridiculous Hecarim play. No, his Hecarim play was so bad. He was like, I am legit gonna circle this tower or something, and then I'm gonna try to get Aluka. Okay, but I'm not. You would have to watch it. I think I'm gonna gif it after this.
Yeah.
Yes, please make a gif of that die.
So wait, now we have the question: who is worse on Hecarim, Aluka or Looper?
I think it has to be Aluka, just because I have seen Looper play decent. Like Looper at least has decent engagements on Hecarim, whereas Aluka's like
just gallops around randomly.
I'm gonna teleport in, and I'm just gonna. This teleport is not good. No, I just think WE shot calling is awful. Like it's legitimately terrible. It might be worse than Kings. Like I don't.
Yeah, but they
Such
have
a
like their
bold
full
statement.
lineup. That's what makes it worse.
Yeah.
Well, and yeah, and the big thing about that too is like Spirit's such a vision god, right? Like when we look at him and the performances that he's had in the past, so they have innately more access to information than in most other teams a lot of the time because of how good Spirit is at vision control.
Legitimately
But they
insane.
just still make the fucking wrong choice every time.
Yeah, it's actually weird because Spirit usually is like a vision god, but like for instance, in their set against WE or against OMG, they like seem to not really care because Spirit actually had a really good early start on Italy, I think in game 1, and then he just like got caught twice in a row and actually lost the game for his team for like the first time I've ever seen something be Spirit's fault on World Elite. So I don't know, maybe he's not caring. I mean, he doesn't give a fuck. He's happy anyway. I don't know what kind of drugs I have him on to be able to like sustain his career on World Elite, but it must be some good shit. Like I don't know.
Well, he was under the delusion that they were going to be so much better. Didn't they interview him before? And they were like,
Spirit was like,
he was
the
like,
only
yeah, we're
team-
going to be a top team.
The only team we're gonna lose to is EDG. I was like, okay, Spirit, it's all right. And he's still like smiling at the end of the game, every game, and it's okay, Spirit. Okay.
The IEM tournament was just like their glimmer of false hope that's just gonna like fuel him for the rest of the split before he just.
And then people
Gets
said
him
they put Conan back on the
depressed.
lineup, and that team started to suck. Conan played playoffs, okay? Conan played like the last couple weeks of LPL and playoffs, so I don't stop blaming Conan. He didn't do anything to you. He's decent at Morgana. He's really terrible at Nautilus. Please stop playing Nautilus.
Oh my god. All right. I think I have successfully derailed.
Okay, so we it's okay. We covered the WE part. So.
Yeah.
we
Got WE out of the way.
as long as it's okay. So as long as we're talking about WE, let's mention the other faltering team. Here.
Dumpster fire.
The worst team of 2015 LPL,
I'm pretty sure.
including WE
Spring.
and EP of last split.
Like, where are Insec and Zero?
Yeah, but
Okay.
okay. The thing is like even without Insec and Zero, like Korn and Cola are playing significantly worse.
Everyone
too.
is just playing worse. Even Name
Yeah.
is playing
Yeah.
worse.
Well,
Like,
Name's
had
a
that,
given. Name's still food poisoning.
Name
man.
had
Tilt.
that
Tilt.
insane like first set against Master 3 where he got like +3 points buff against SMLZ because he's Wei Xiao's disciple. He's like, yes, I must beat this man.
Is that the game where his like Jinx outdamaged his entire team?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Fine.
the second
Okay.
one with the Urgot where like every time they 5-man dove him, he killed someone. Like,
He just used all his fuel early.
and
And
now
then you have
he's
those
just sucks again.
shining moments.
And
where
Corn
he's
is like, why are you playing Azir? Why? Stop! No more! I can't watch these ults! No! I can't!
Okay, there's the ult when he's by Dragon Fight, and the fight is like over. Like everyone's walking away, it's disengaged, and he's just like,
And then he's there. Yeah.
Ah, like got ya. No
I
one's
can't.
starting this fight up. Not while I'm here.
Nothing was better than my favorite moment of King this week was when they were against Snake and Huey just like gets a successful gank off, or I don't even remember if it was a successful ganks, but he just like walks up to Name's wave and just absolute zeros it and then walks back into the jungle.
And
just
Quit,
like clears the whole thing
I
and just
swear,
leaves.
like, Quit wasn't this bad on Gamty either. I think the problem is that Quit only plays Jarvan, and he played Jarvan in, like, every single Gamty set, and it was okay. But now he's just awful. I don't understand. Like, he's getting wrecked by pretty much everyone.
I think he's trying to maybe he's trying to enhance Name's like spirit training. He's just like, I'm
Yeah,
gonna sabotage
this
you
is-
and
this
see
is-
what you can do with nothing.
Nami's been having some pretty rough spirit training for a long time, to be fair.
Like,
Yeah.
That is
yeah.
true. He's had the
And
most spirit training of anybody.
He's been playing like progressive. He's had a really bad week. Like his week was not good. I don't know. Like
I
he's
feel like
still,
Name like just isn't
he's
playing
still-
outside of LPL or something.
he still had
But I
these
can't
like
remember.
really clutch spell shields on Sivir. It's like he legit hit it exactly as the cask hit, and like all these other things that make you're like, okay, this is still
But-
Name. He could
I
still be good if he actually applied himself. Or
Yeah,
something.
but for someone who like has those clutch spell shields, he tried to 1v1 Crystal and lost
got
because he got
bodied.
spell shielded on like so
Yeah.
hard. We spent
Yeah.
the beginning of that game like, how many times is Crystal gonna die to Name? And you're like, oh man, I'm so excited. I just want to watch him die to Name all game. And then Name at like 25 minutes when Crystal's finally caught up, like goes in on Sivir. Everything gets blocked by spell shield, and then tanks a boomerang blade to the face and dies.
Yeah.
Like,
To be fair,
I-
he was like ridiculously behind at that point too, and it just like he's either tilting or he's not playing or he's just not. I don't
It
understand.
just feel like just from watching him, it just feels like a result of not playing. Like I mean, it has to be so demotivating to be on that team, you know? Like, I can't imagine people on there are practicing very
I don't
much.
understand
Very
why
hard.
they did this. Like, if they're gonna just run this roster without Insec and Zero, and they're not gonna practice or whatever it is that they're doing, I don't understand why they bothered to buy the spot.
To buy the spot.
Well,
yeah.
and it's not
That's
like
what I
they're
was
getting
wondering.
like good advertise. It's not like these. I don't know about Corn and Cola, but I know that Name doesn't really have much of a fan base, right? Like people don't like Name. So it's not like there's advertising money or like there's like a business aspect to this. Like these guys aren't famous.
Like, people used to like Name, but I feel like his cred is just completely smashed.
I think on
because of-
paper it could have been a good idea. I mean, especially if Insec and Zero played. Like, Insec was one of the best junglers at one point. Zero was the best support at one point in LPL. And Corn was getting better, and Cola was getting quickly, like, a lot better. And Name has one of the biggest, or the best peaks of any AD carry in the world at his prime. And then it's just like, yeah, it's like everybody in the entire team is in a slump at the same time, which just, like, gives me the idea that they just don't give a shit and they're not practicing. It's the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm just not gonna expect anything from this team, pretty much. Going forward, like, I don't even expect them to win a single game right now. Like, they're that bad, so...
And that's a little disappointing, given we just talked about like unlimited potential RNG and M3 as all teams who are going to do better than definitely not Starhorn Royal Club and World Elite. Like when you think about these guys' history, and they're like they're legend. They're like most of these guys were at some point like, or these teams and these team names were like legends in China, and now it's just like. Welcome to like you said, dumpster fire. Here we go.
And all the players on King 2 have really insane credentials. Cola and Corn, second place at Worlds. Insec was on KT Bullets and did really well at Starhorn, second place at Worlds as well. Name won LPL and hard carried harder than any other player, like, by himself, ever, you know? And
the fact that I only think there are probably like 280 carries in history that have just like monstered people outside of Season 2 and carried like when 80 carries were broken, who have just been able to hard carry their teams. It's like Name and Wei Xiao. I don't know. Like, people say UZI, and I think maybe there have been a couple of games where... But I can't right now remember a game where every single lane and every single other role does poorly, and UZI just monsters everyone. Like, I can't remember a game like that.
So...
I don't know.
Okay, so let's like just ignore the dumpster fire, like close the door out into that back alley.
That said, UZI is playing better when he's not playing Vayne. The split, I actually think UZI has found some consistency with amazing relative to last split, so there you go.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that UZI is playing Sivir and stuff now, too.
Yeah. Well, Sivir has a significantly better win rate for him than Vayne does, okay?
Yeah.
Can we stop comparing? Like, Vayne is legit the worst win rate of any champion he's played more than 10 games on.
I was gonna say outside of Kalista, right?
Yeah, and Kalista is actually of his top 10 most played champions. Kalista has his worst win rate, and everyone bans Kalista against him every single game. So I don't understand what's happening, but these like connotations that UZI is like a Vayne and Kalista monster, he's like significantly better at like Lucy and Sivir. Think about these early game like lane dumpsterers, right? Those are UZI's champions, and he says that Vayne is like
Caitlyn.
His favorite.
I remember him for Caitlyn.
Yeah, he plays Caitlyn.
And when Sivir split push was popular, like that's all he did. And admittedly, like the lineup was pretty not so good at that time. But I mean, like UZI, the question was like when they were just kind of leaving him out to dry, he would just split push with Sivir all the time.
Granted, he tends to pick Vayne when he thinks he has to hard carry, and he's usually like tilting in those moments, so that probably has something to do with it. But
emotional tilting, at least.
Obviously, it's not his hard carry champion in that case. I think Lucian is the champion he needs to default to when he's behind, all this other stuff. Like, Lucian is traditionally like his god champion. So that's how I feel about UZI. Meanwhile, Spirit has been on a team called WE for so long, since Nidalee was a jungler, and he has a 90% win rate on Nidalee. How is that even possible? No one knows.
Spirit is god.
He's won 9 of his 10 Nidalee games. How? We don't know.
Because he like won.
He literally wins by himself.
Yeah,
he goes around the map and just kills everyone alone.
The best example of this is that one game, and I forget which. It was like the
EDG?
second game against EDG. Yeah, where he's in top lane and he just like legit 1v3s.
Like level 5. It's like what is happening?
And you're just like, oh, okay, I guess W is gonna win this game now because Spirit is ahead on Nidalee.
I don't. And that is people. You can always tell people new to LPL when they're watching a WE game. They're like, "Why are they banning Nidalee?" Because you need to. Just trust me on this.
Regardless of the meta, Spirit will destroy you.
And that OMG versus WE set, like at the end of the week, where Spirit plays Nidalee and UZI picks Vayne. Guess who won? Spirit.
The hesitation in your voice, Emily.
Spirit.
No.
Is this a trick question?
I know.
It felt like a trap.
No, it was OMG. No.
All right. So, oh god, let's take it back a little bit. I know we skipped ahead in our topic list, but let's talk about LGD. PYL back this week. Everybody's pretty excited about that. Pick and bans were a little bit interesting. Before we go to that, let's talk about PYL. How do we feel about LGD this week and their performance now that PYL has returned?
They look massively better. I'm not saying in terms of actually winning, because I think they ended up splitting their sets, but
they're still LGD and they're still doing LGD things, but
yeah, I mean, like they're experimenting basically. I know that's like a dirty word, but they're experimenting with a lot of things, and I thought some of the things they chose were kind of weird but very fun to watch. And I think that like PYL, just what he brings, like the team just looks so much more coordinated. Even when they're losing, at least they like make decisions and then follow through on those decisions. So it's like watching LGD without PYL was like a mess.
Also, LGD has always historically been really, really good at utilizing the summer split or the regular split as a tool for playoffs, better than almost any other team. They've always been heavy into experimentation, trying things out, and feeling out their roster. And then in playoffs, they do really, really well. It was the same deal in. It was actually like the highlight of this was in spring when they were like okay to moderately good in the regular split, but then almost won LPL like the playoffs. And I feel like it's gonna kind of be the same thing again. Like the players just. The talent is so good and PYL is so smart that I don't really see this team staying middle of the pack, especially compared to other Chinese teams. They're just really, really intelligent. So I just expect them to feel things out for the first few weeks and then probably just start dominating again as usual.
Talking about decisiveness, the fact that last week LGD just kind of was passively losing. Talking to like their coach specifically made the statement like, this is earlier than we wanted to bring PYL back, but the team didn't really want to play with Fan anymore. I think you could tell that, like, if you look at Imp's AMA, someone specifically asked him, how do you feel about your new support? He doesn't look so good. Do you miss PYL? And he says, LOLOL, I don't want to play.
That's the best AMA of all time. That's all I'm going to say. I love
Imp's AMA was, like, fantastic.
So... yeah, so I think that maybe they're still like working out the kinks on that. He was wearing like the mask. I'm just imagining PYL, like his jaw is still hurting. He's just like sitting there like, please God. It's like, you have to talk, you have to lead us. No.
Well, isn't he like, I remember being in Call of Duty watching a couple of the LGD games this week. Isn't he still on like an all juice diet and stuff like that?
I'm not sure if this is over. I just know that after his surgery, he had to go 30 days without eating. So,
oh my god. Yeah, that sounds about right, though. I've
heard
of those experiences. That's terrible.
That's okay.
So he's probably grumpy, too.
Yeah. I'd be miserable.
Just, like, steps in, starts bossing the team around. But no, I honestly thought, like, all jokes aside, LGD looked... Like, even in their losses, they like, just look a lot.
And the experimentation, like, the other thing is that we talk about how LGD experiments and uses the regular season much better than a lot of different teams. Like, trying a bunch of stuff, like, these really crazy picks all the time. Like, that was gone the first week as well, too. But the second week, it was back. And it's like...
Even if they didn't, like, crush the competition and they didn't, like, win all of their games, their strategy was executed with like direction, like whereas they didn't even have strategy in week one. They weren't executing anything. They were just playing and waiting to lose. And in week two, it's like, okay, well, we'll try this and we'll stick to it, whether we win or lose. But it was still an executed strategy. It wasn't just the blind play that they showed in week one. It was a huge difference. Like maybe results aside, like just watching POL go back into the team, it's just insane. Because you'd think like LGD has enough talent that without a primary shot caller, they'd at least still win like individually and just do well enough on that merit alone. But like it's literally night and day. When POL is introduced into the team, it's like they become a completely different team. Yeah,
You have to hide TBQ with strategy.
Like honestly, like that's what it is. It's TBQ.
yeah, it is. I don't know. TBQ is like really
Just
concerning
put him
because
on
like
Lisa in every game.
I feel like it was excusable back in like 2013 or early 2014 when like LGD didn't really have like an all-star lineup of talent, and so TBQ was just kind of like, okay, they're like some other players on his team. But now that LGD has so many amazing players surrounding TBQ, I don't really understand why he's still in the squad, especially because I feel like the spring was like the testing grounds of if he can keep up with the team. And while he did do pretty well in playoffs and did okay near the end of the regular spring split, I still feel like he hasn't really resolved any of the issues that make him kind of a liability during summer compared to the rest of his team.
And I'm so disappointed that Raz isn't here, because someone on my Ask.fm asked me, LGD Captain 57? I was like, of course!
Yeah.
How did I not think of this before? It's not that Captain 57 would be this god jungler, but literally, like, where is that guy? Put him on the team.
Yeah, I mean LGD
Just
with any
someone-
star jungler or even like good jungler,
Just
like,
someone who
decent
doesn't
jungler.
make mistakes. Like, just someone who doesn't make mistakes, isn't a liability in team fights to like totally mess up their skill shots or, you know, abilities would help. Like, I'm sorry, if you're falling behind on Nunu against a Sejuani, like that's a problem.
That's
or if you're missing all of your skill shots and
Yeah.
only have skill shots, that is also a problem.
Yeah.
That's the other weird thing, because last split, LGD found the way to work around TBQ before the Cinderhulk meta, where they were just having PYL and Wayless roam all the time. And then, so this would put the bottom lane and the mid lane behind, but then they would come back through like really good dragon team fighting. If you're gonna play that way, don't put TBQ on the champion with like the most important team fighting ability, like the Gragas explosive cask. Like you can't actually do that. So
Well, the worst thing
Well, you
too is,
can. But...
that's why they put him on
Gragas-
Vi all the
tried.
time. They were
Yeah.
like, "Yes, you can just get the 80 carry. It's okay. We're good. Just do this."
no skill shots, you'll be okay.
It's-
Well, that's
I-
like
Weird though. Like, why can't he play Lee Sin? That's the
Yeah, I
great
know, that's
TB
the other thing.
Yeah,
question.
it makes no sense.
The disparity between his Lee Sin play and everything else is just so puzzling. That my only guess is that he
He's
just at
much-
one point
he's
was
actually even
much too much of a
decisive
one-hit wonder.
and proactive. Like he's a better jungler on Lee Sin. He has like good objective control. He ganks lane, and then like I wouldn't say his team fighting improves on Lee Sin though, because he still does like random going in and TBQ things. But
And
he
that
hits
makes
his
no
kill
sense.
skill shots. You just feel like you just wish he wouldn't. I think.
Well, then it's more of like I don't think you'll ever be able to fix his decision making, because that for me has always been something that's just really questionable about him. Like he doesn't engage when he should engage, and then he either re-engages or engages when he shouldn't, and it just makes no sense. And that doesn't really change depending on champion.
so.
I don't know. I feel like I'm being mean, but
This is my kind of like, this is a really general question. I know this is on the doc, but this is something that I like struggle with as a fan of a lot of teams. When a team experiments so much during the regular season, right, and they like do all this stuff that sometimes works, that sometimes doesn't, how do you like continually expect them to perform in playoffs? Because for me, is like I watch mostly NA, EU, and KR, and when a team like shits the bed in the regular season and just does weird stuff and loses, I just don't expect anything from the playoffs. So how do you, I mean, like, what in LGD's play like makes you think that there's something greater here?
I think in China, it's just like I think Korea is going to feel this way next year actually. But I think with China, a lot of it's just like experience. We're so used to seeing them play just so many games that we just come to expect it. Whereas you don't really have an excuse for teams to be messing up regular games in NA and EU and in the past LCK. And this just historically, it's been a thing with LGD as a whole. To be able to do this, they've always been the intelligent team that maybe weren't always miraculous individually, although now that's definitely not the case outside of the jungle. They are very good individually.
TVQ is miraculous. Okay.
Just not in the best way.
But
Yeah.
But no, I really do think it's just from just, the 24 games a week. We always see the huge amount of third-party tournaments and stuff like that, Demacia Cup and whatnot, and all that together, like, it kind of puts a little more faith into those teams initially. Like, obviously, we can't 100% say, okay, LGD's going to do great in playoffs, but evidence presented in the past through the sheer amount of games and how these teams utilize the sheer amount of games compared to the other regions which have a more meager supply of games has just shown us that it's a little more reliable to make guesses based on if teams are playing differently. Like, okay, this is something a little bit new. They must obviously be experimenting in this case.
You can
Well,
also... Sorry.
Like, oh no, I was just gonna say for me, like coming to, because I only really watched Starhorn last year, right? Because I've been second zero. Like I'll admit, I was a China plebe last year, but so going into this year, like I don't have a lot of experience with the league in terms of how it experiments and stuff, but I feel like there are certain things you can look for in game in terms of how a team is performing. And LGD, like look at one of their losses without PYL on the team, and then look at one of their losses with PYL on the team. I feel like you can at least tell that they're still an intelligent team even while they're experimenting and that they have direction. And that's something that's really important for playoffs. So you could take a look at that team and be like, okay, I can see how this team would do something in the playoffs that's another team that's just kind of random, like, say, RNG wouldn't be able to do.
And because they are willing to play like all these weird things in regular season, as soon as they come out with something new, right? Last split we would say, please stop playing Callista, please stop playing please stop playing Diana and all this other stuff, and those would become like their best champions over the course of the season, right? So
PYL Bard, let's go.
Yeah, Bard's Vayne Bard. Are we doing it?
And he's been playing a lot of Bard. Like he started playing. I think he was the first person to play Bard competitively last split. So.
Yeah.
It's just it's interesting to see them like keep playing these things that you think, okay, stop, and then having this crazy payoff later. So, like Wayless collects all these weird bans. Like towards the end, it's like, why are you banning Cho'Gath and Diana against this team like every game? This doesn't make any sense. And he's like, oh, I'm gonna play Vlad before the patch change and see how that goes. It's like, no, Wayless, what are you doing? Please stop. Maybe they'll ban it against me next. No.
He drew the mid Ferris ban already, so
yeah. And his Varus damage, like if you look at the damage to champions at the end of the game, is insane. But like he consistently does the most damage in the game on Varus. He plays a lot of Varus and solo queue.
Varus is...
A lot of Varus and Fizz. I think with Wayless, he's like one of those players unique in China, where whatever they play in solo queue is what they're gonna play in LPL. You can always tell. Like when he brought out Ahri the first time in the first split, he was like the first person to play Ahri in LPL, I think. He had just like 17 straight games on Ahri in solo queue, and it's like, oh, guess he's gonna play Ahri.
Someone's gotta be the hipster now that Zeta's top lane.
Zeta is still a hipster in his own way.
Is still a hipster. We'll
He's
get
still
there.
Yeah. Okay.
So to kind of recap on LGD, I mean, now that PYL is back and we're seeing more intelligent play, even if it is with kind of oddball compositions from LGD, do we think that this is just LGD once again returning to their roots, experimenting, trying new things during the regular season?
I think so, especially because of the fact that this might as well technically be week 1 for LGD. I mean, the last week wasn't really LGD because it's like removing the brain from a human being. They can't function anymore. I mean, that's just...
they are going to probably pick it up a little bit more, because I think, again, because they're saying, okay, PYL's probably out of practice, this other stuff, and they might have to refine their synergy, because I remember last split they won a lot of games at the beginning so that they had that cushion to experiment and everything, and then they could pretty much decide where they wanted to place. So I think that we will see them pick up some more in the next couple weeks. And then go back to doing this. Or maybe they won't. Maybe they just will take the early time to experiment and goof off, and then they'll pick up towards the end this time. We'll see.
Emily, did you have anything to add?
No.
All right. So we talk about Wayless and his interesting mid lane picks, one of them being Fizz, but Fizz not so popular in the mid lane anymore. Let's talk about so the exact quote from the doc that I've been presented is Cinderhulk Fizz. Why? How? What the fuck? So
That's a pretty
Cinderhulk
accurate
Fizz.
description.
I mean, and I think I can say, let's talk about Cinderhulk Fizz. Why are it's being played, and it's being played a lot, and with some decent success. So why is Cinderhulk Fizz showing up? What is this pick?
I'm not sure how I feel about it compared to like an actual damage build, but I will say that if you like throw it on paper, it seems like a good idea because it's a item that benefits from building other tank items and sticking to a target, and as Fizz you are always going to be sticking on one target, and Fizz does happen to have really high base damage. I don't think it's the best choice for him, but I think it's the safest choice, and you can still get the job done and put out consistent damage on one target and apply W procs because you're tanky. But I don't know. It's really confusing. It's like I'm trying to like justify the build here, like through the mind of someone building it, but I'm not sure it's the best choice, honestly.
I went through all of the ones that were in LPL this past week. So Amazing J, he has Cinderhulk Triforce and then Blade. Zatai played it twice. Cinderhulk Frozen Heart Triforce. The second time he built it, Cinderhulk Frozen Heart Frozen Fist. But that was also that was also
Quick 40% CDR.
Yeah. Well, that was in their last match against BG, and that was it was against Dandy top lane, and all sorts of crazy.
I'm sorry, Monty informed me that Dandy has carried teams in League of Legends in the Masters League, okay? As a top laner.
Right, I think.
Well, he did make the comment, apparently, that his Rumble is better than Abrams, which we'll just leave it at that. Andy's apparently said that, though. So, but yeah, and then Sky, Cinderhulk, Frozen Heart, Spirit Visage, Triforce, and then Cola, Cinderhulk, Triforce. And the only person to lose was Cola, and I don't think it's because of Cinderhulk Fizz.
And then in Demacia Cup last night, it was in, I swear to God, like every single game. But it was the Cinderhulk Frozen Heart build, actually, which is interesting.
It feels to me like what this build is just Challenging Smite being very, very strong, and Cinderhulk being very, very... Like, I feel like Challenging Smite is good on Fizz because, like you said, it benefits from him being able to stick to a target, it reduces damage, and obviously, like, the dot really just works pretty well with Fizz overall, right? Because his Urchin Strike applies it as well as Q. Mm-hmm. But I feel like the only reason that this is happening is because both Challenging Smite and Cinderhulk are so strong. Right? Because, like, I feel like if either one of those items was slightly worse, this build path would be total crap. Like, absolutely awful. It feels like if Warrior was better, he'd be more likely to build Warrior. Or if he could actually get jungle camps, he'd build Devourer. But because Cinderhulk is so strong, and because Challenging Smite is so strong, this is actually a viable build path, which is, I mean, for me, mind-blowing, but in that sense, I suppose I will
say, like,
he's like his kit makes him so untargetable, and then he gets like damage reduction also in his kit. So then you slap like a frozen heart on and a bunch of HP, and you're just like, man, you're not gonna damage me. I'm not gonna get hurt at all. I'm just gonna hop around. Well, I'm not gonna do much of anything else.
Yeah. Like I felt like the tie was like the perfect example.
That's the weird thing, though.
Like, he'd go in, and then he'd do no damage, and then he had to go back and build a Triforce, because it's like he would just hop around and not die. And then, like, Qiao had to come and, like, help him out. Like,
it's so hard to say it's bad, though. It's so statistically successful. Like, that's what's really...
Well, and the thing is like, I guess, like, when you hit him with the Shark, right, you get that damage boost, too, so it's just... It feels so meh.
Damage. And you just you don't even need the Triforce, you just kind of need like a sheen, right? To apply on it, and it's just like, okay, I can kind of get away with this.
I mean, it's not, I think there's worse things to build, but I don't know.
I just don't okay, so you can see it and we can logic it and we can say, yeah, it seems like pretty legit, like it's, like there are reasons to do it, but then the fact that it's, I think it was legitimately in every single game last night. Like, I'm not kidding. In Demacia Cup.
I think that's the thing I understand, because, like, I will make a case that actually works really well for Zatai because of what he does on that team and his team in general.
And
But
like Amazing J for the same reason, right? He's kind of like a similar split push, do stupid things kind of player, right?
Yeah, so. But then having it in every single game and having it be a thing is...
I don't know.
It's weird that it's so explicit. Like, it's viable,
has it appeared anywhere else in the world? Like, is it just...
I think it's just...
Okay. I have no idea then. So...
Yeah.
It's so strange.
See, I think it would appear in other regions if Korea and NA weren't both so excited by Yasuo top. I think that every region has to have its one weird-ass top laner that's seeing too much play.
I saw Yasuo top in Brazil this
and AD carry, right? Last year.
I'm waiting for that just because I feel like Rookie and Zatai are just gonna roll swap one of these days, and then like Rookie's gonna play. Well, I guess Zatai played a lot of Yasuo too.
Well, Rookie got some like god buffs this.
Oh my gosh! Someone's gonna play Yasuo top against Zatai, and he's gonna break out the Zed. This is gonna happen. Like, I'm waiting for it. Oh my god.
That'll be the best worst thing.
And then next game he'll pick the Zed and they'll pick the Fizz to counter and they'll roll swap. And it'll be the ultimate
mind games.
Cinderhulk Zed.
Cinderhulk Zed, so you can stick on the target.
This is the thing about IG is that they can play so much random shit. Like all of their players have like these bottomless champion pools that whatever they want to do. Like legitimately, last night in Demacia Cup, because they were just raffling ADG, they played Hecarim top, Karthus jungle, and Riven mid, and they're just like, "Yep, let's go. We're gonna
Cacao Karthus jungle."
I don't know if you saw, but legendary jungler Saint Vicious played a lot of Karthus jungle in the last season.
Do you know who else played Karthus jungle? Ra for WE.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That guy was a beast.
Why did we bring in Spirit again? I feel like the Karthus.
the Karthus. Okay. But yeah, I don't understand. I understand, but I don't understand why it's so much.
Why it's a thing. Yeah. Like why is it a trend, not a one-off?
This reminds me of when like Chinese junglers back in season 3 were like super obsessed with Yorick jungle.
I'm probably gonna have to do math on this and
really
see, like,
obsessed with it.
How good it is.
I think the thing to look at too, and maybe you can tell me this right.
There has to be something, right?
Well, what matchup is it played into consistently?
Do we have damage charts for those games? Because that'd be a lot easier to like.
Yeah.
Pick if this is actually.
Maybe like come back next week, look at the damage, look at the matchups, and like add to the. Because
they played it into a bunch of different stuff, so.
It's into a bunch of different stuff. I think it more depends on making sure that your team has a carry that's not top. Like, for example. Kid or Rookie IG, for IG,
it works so well for IG because of the way it described their playstyle, which is that, like, I don't know, Zatai just tries to all in, like, every single top laner is against, and he almost always kills them, but then the jungler will be there. Like, this is the story of Zatai's life. He's like, why is there an enemy jungler? I made a joke in the VG Gaming versus IG series where I was like, maybe if he lanes against the enemy team's jungler, he'll realize that the enemy jungler exists. Like, but he just does this stupid stuff, and
not even then.
At this point, enemy teams know that he's gonna do that. They just they sit up there and they're like, "Yep, we're just gonna. This is good." And then meanwhile, Rookie and Kid are just like getting massive farm advantages just by laning. Yep. And eventually, Cacao and Rookie are like, "Okay, we'll go top and save you now," and then they fix his lane. So.
Outside of the Fizz pick.
No, I told you stop calling me that. We'll replace you with Pokemon. I could be Pokemon right now. Oh, okay.
Why would he play Maokai? Pokemon's a great Maokai.
Why?
Oh my god, yeah.
Alright, dang it. I'm so bad at not derailing talk shows, which is weird.
Okay.
Alright, so let's look at IG. Outside of the Fizz top pick. Let's look at IG. Let's talk about a little bit more about IG and in general. And we mentioned Rookie briefly, and obviously he's got that so great Oriana highlight, and it is admittedly a really sweet play from actually a pretty poor set. But so Emily, you told us about Swift. Tell us about Rookie.
Rookie is someone who's near and dear to my heart because he was on my favorite team. Or with my favorite organization, not really my favorite team. But like when when he was in Korea, it was kind of Kakao trying to snowball either Rookie, Someday, or Arrow. And Rookie was definitely, like, in my opinion, the most successful. He actually had the most kills in Champion Summer, tied with Def during the season. He has a really deep champion pool. It should come as no surprise that his most picked champion during that season was actually Orianna. And then obviously we mentioned the Yasuo, and his Syndra was really good as well. I mean, he just has like a really strong champion pool. He was kind of one of those people who when it came out that like so many players were going to be leaving Korea for China, like people were like, oh, you know, it's such and such player. Well, they're kind of at the end of their prime anyway, blah, blah, blah. But then when it came out that Kakao and especially Rookie were leaving, like he'd only, you know, like played a couple of seasons, like he was known as up and coming talent. Like he was one of those, like on the team of KT Arrows, it was a team of players where you looked at them and like through all of their incredible mistakes, of which there were many, there were like equally incredible highlights. So it was kind of like, okay, well, is this team going to reach like their skill ceiling was kind of always the narrative around that team. And so Rookie is someone who I don't think reached his skill ceiling. And I'm super, super happy that he's doing so well in China. Like I think, I don't know. I don't want to make like general sweeping statements about who the best
He's
mid
the best
is.
mid laner in China. Okay.
But yeah,
This
like,
this split he looks so good.
He
Or
looked
last split
so
far.
good last split too. Like I
Yeah,
think
but I feel like I don't know. I feel
everyone
like he looks
saw
up better
that
this
matchup against that best of 5 against EDG where IG just kind of checked out and Pawn played LeBlanc, okay, and camped the lane, and like Ricky got crushed. Like people just saw that, they're like, oh my god, Pawn is so good. Oh my god, Pawn! But Rookie had more.
very
Like
accurate.
we're talking about the can Rookie reach his skill ceiling? That was the question. He was the most consistent mid laner of the top mid laners. Like he was really good. Like
Yeah, I can
Cool
see
had
that.
a really good early half, right? And then fell off, and then Wayless was like, up and down, let's go. You guys can't see my hand.
Yeah, so it's so much more awkward when I can't see your
yeah,
camera.
But he was just like, he had these ups and downs where he's like got really good at this champion, and the people banded against him. He's like, okay, starting over on a new champion. Okay, people are banding. Okay, and Wayless was like up and down all throughout the season. And then Pawn was doing crazy shit all the time, and like you could argue that Pawn was really good, but in terms of like the game impact, Rookie was the carry of Invictus Gaming.
Yeah.
Like there's Rookie and Kakao are the main forces on that team. So.
yeah, they needed him to be in the very beginning because like when that team was coming together, it was kind of all over the place, and like Pokemon was in the top lane, and like the one thing they could rely on was that mid jungle synergy that they already had. So I don't know, I love Rookie. I'm just glad that people are starting to pay attention to him more.
I love how I love how much you love the KT organization and every player that like leaves there and goes elsewhere in the world.
Yeah,
How,
like I'll follow that.
so like the end
I
of
only
the earth.
watched it for Insect and Zero. It's like Zero wasn't even good on KT. I only care about Insect and
He
Zero.
I know, he like tried to forget his like his jungling, like try to just scrub that from your mind.
Why did he even jungle that series? I watched that series. I was trying
No,
to research
it was
Zero, and I went back and I watched
bad.
that series. I was like, why did I just do this?
Why? Why did I subject myself to this culture? Yes.
But yeah, so Rookie, I think, is really strong. I think IG's drafting is incredibly strong. Like, we talk about
Yes.
the main strengths of Invictus Gaming, I think it's their drafting. Their drafting was kind of like, they just weren't good against Qiao Gu. I don't know what it was. Like, they went for too much late game, I think, in one of the games. They played way too conservatively, and then they just got kind of... And their team fighting wasn't as good. Like, I think of IG as a really good team fighting team generally, too. But...
Well, for when I see generally in the world when I see teams pick too much late game, it's usually them not expecting, not no, I'm not going to say not respecting, not respecting their opponents as much in the early
Mhm.
game, because we see this in all over. Like, especially with Azir being really popular, you see these ridiculous like late game comps with like Azir, Nunu, and like a Jinx, right, where you just have absolutely nothing in the early game, and you see it pretty much around the world. And I feel like the consistent underlying thing is that teams are disrespecting, or teams aren't expecting much. So do you think Invictus didn't expect much from Qiao Gu, or do you think this is kind of like we see from a lot of LPL teams, them experimenting in the early weeks?
Well, like I said, Invictus more or less gets away with what they want to do. I think against most teams, like they can pick really, really high scaling mids and bottom lanes because Zatai just commands so much attention. Because I think almost like Zatai is really dumb, but he will kill your top laner. Like if you leave him alone, he will kill your top.
Yeah, he'll
laner.
just 1v1 your top.
Like he'll just murder him. Like he doesn't care. And part of it is because he doesn't believe in enemy junglers, but so he just like is completely fearless, whereas the other guy's like saving his cooldowns or whatever else, and Zatai's like, no, you're gonna die. Sorry.
That's why I love Zatai,
So
to be
you
honest.
kind of have to send your top laner top, or kind of have to send your jungler top, and of course, like you usually can get a free kill out of it because Zatai is so dumb. But because of that, mid and bottom lane get to do pretty much, and Kakao get to do pretty much whatever they want. So they get away with all sorts of stuff, and I don't think this is intentional by any means. I don't think it's calculated. I think it's something that they don't even realize they're doing, and it just happens to be they're compensating for what Zatai naturally wants to do. So, I don't know. I think they just didn't expect Swift to get the complete drop on them and to be able to both shore up the top lane matchup, because I do think Qiao Gu, like V, is really overlooked in terms of how strong he is. And also their top laner, and also the fact that like I'm just gonna dive rookie in the first 3 minutes, whatever. So.
All right.
Yeah. Although I don't know. Complacency is somewhat of an issue, but at the same time, they did get to see 2 sets before they went against IG or QG in that set. So
IG has always been a complacent team, I think, in general. Just like the culture of their organization is very complacent in terms of they just want to have fun.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know what that means for IG in the future, but do we expect great things from them in this split? I mean,
because their players
think-
are so young, right? So
Yeah.
it's almost like they've almost always had their entire careers against them, because like Zatai and kids started playing for the organization when they're like 14, 15, and they're just now 17, so they're just like, oh, we still have time to be serious. And I think rookie
and Zitai actually does want to be serious to split according to his outlook on
did he
cheapening
say,
the
like-
season invitational. So
Yeah, he wants to go
wants
and
to be
face
EDG,
EDG. Yeah.
But it's just interesting. And then he made that comment about like sleepless nights and all this other stuff. So maybe they'll be serious. I just feel like they still don't have to be. Like they're not being challenged on a consistent basis. And I mean, Vici Gaming didn't even run a logical roster against them. So, and that's arguably like one of their top half contenders.
all right. Expecting something from Invictus Gaming and from Cinderhulk Fizz.
Like
in the
obviously when you talk about Invictus Gaming and LGD, you have to say that these two teams are potential favorites to go to Worlds. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree with
Yep.
but they have serious problems
that.
during the regular season.
I mean, even EDG now has a serious problem, and that's
Yeah,
that
and
Amazing Jay is their top laner.
You have to think that of
Well, Korea came back.
of all the teams that are goofing off the most right now, like they're the favorites to go to Worlds. EDG, IG, LGD, right? And I mean maybe Vici Gaming, but if Carrie was legitimately sick and they're like, oh, we're not going to beat them without our main lineup, let's just have fun. I guess
Let's
that's,
put Dandy in the top lane.
that's something else. But
Danny wanted a chance to prove that his Rumble was better, but didn't really.
but
you know,
didn't realize that Acorn is on LGD.
What a coincidence.
oops,
What a
forgot.
strange experience.
All right, so I think that's actually going to be it for us today on China Talk. Thanks so much again to this panel for having me on to host. Sorry you guys didn't get Raz and his opinion on, I don't even remember that LSPL mid laner's name, or jungler's name.
Captain
But,
57.
Captain 57.
The name only a champion would wield.
He's the captain.
He's a captain. He can make the calls necessary for the team to win. Is there actually, before I close out, is there anything else you guys wanted to touch on really quickly?
LSPL plug, since Raz isn't here. WE Future versus Legend Dragon should be a really interesting set on, I think, tomorrow night. So.
All right. Well,
other than that, we usually just do shoutouts and then kind of
yeah,
wait for an awkward duration.
Shout out to the score. I write the articles. I wrote about Qiao Gu. We talked about them at length at the beginning. I wrote about each of the players' histories and their storylines in an article. So you can read that. I know a lot of people. Confession: I wrote that article because people are calling them the Cloud9 of China, which I would prefer that they would stop doing that. But I don't think my article will help that much. So.
Read Kelsey Moser's new article about the Cloud9 of China. Download the app. iPhone and Android. Maybe Windows. I don't know.
Yeah, shout out to Emily too. She's always writing a lot of stuff.
I am. I also actually wrote a Qiao Gu and UP article
potential.
last week. Yeah, before week 1. So you want like a more brief overview? That's not as good as Kelsey's.
No. It's
all about the TLDR, man.
Start with
There's value
it's
there.
all about
Emily
the TLDR,
Yeah.
Hers also has UP in it, though, so there you go.
Yeah, she does this weird thing where she keeps like writing about 2 teams at one time in each article, so it happens.
I don't know how she does that. Like, her LOL Esports article, like, LOL Esports has, like, really, really short articles, and mine are, like, 2,500 words about, like, one person.
Oh, well, I've been pushing it. Trust me. I think mine are... I'm supposed to have 1,000 word count, and I have been pushing it, so I need to be better about that.
Anyway,
I could never do it.
Go ahead and read her stuff on that.
So check out Emily at LOL Esports. Check out Kelsey at The Score. Draxton, do you have anything?
Yeah, Emily also writes for The Score sometimes, right? Yeah. Okay, so yeah, shout-outs to my organization, Esports Heaven. We're still taking writers, and actually got a huge amount of applicants that apparently were referred through China Talk, which actually was kind of surprising to me. So I appreciate everybody that applied, and I'm sorry if I get back to you late, because there's literally like a flood, like an insane amount of people that want like writing positions, and I was actually kind of caught off guard by it. So I'm not ignoring anyone's emails. I'm actually reading every single one, and I'll get back to you guys as soon as I can. I promise. I go through like 15 a day. Like, I'm not even kidding. So.
Nice.
Shout out to Tsifa, who is casting the LJL now, right?
Yeah, I am, and it's an exciting league, and it's definitely...
Come on, man, be straight with us. Is it actually exciting?
It's really interesting. That's the thing I'm going to say.
Okay.
It's just like, so the thing is the skill level as an international wildcard region isn't like insane, right? But the teams play weird things, and I got to say, like, the narratives are awesome because the Japanese players are so into it. Like, so into it.
I also think it's cool that for being such like a fresh, new competitive region that their production is already so high. Like, I think they jumped ahead really quick in that regard too, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, there's so much support. There's a ton of organizations supporting it. If you guys are up and are like, man, I don't want to watch this horrible set in China where LGD is playing.
I'd rather watch a horrible Japanese set
again. I would rather watch. I mean, I think there's some sweet
from Boris Mid to Cinderhulk Fizz, like where.
Yeah.
I don't want to watch this horrible set in China. With, like, my entire
if
mentality.
You want to watch standard picks executed either brilliantly or terribly, Japan is where you do it. Shoutouts to LJL. Thank you for hiring me. I hope I didn't offend you. Shoutouts to Fumi, who's been the English-speaking coordinator for the casters and for the English side of things. She has been amazing. I don't know her Twitter handle or if she's on Twitter, but she rocks. Shoutouts to her. Okay, I'm the host, so I'm supposed to close now, aren't I? Okay, thank you guys so much for watching. If you do not already follow at Chinese Law BC on Twitter, you'll be able to check out the VOD of this on YouTube, and of course we'll be back at the same time next week. Well, I won't be here. Hopefully Raz will be back Monday. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Everybody wave.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say like kind of this like very talented up and coming jungler He was known for a lot of early aggression, like creative pathing really early. And when CJ Frost was kind of going through their like rebuilding year, Lyra, who is currently on Anarchy now, and he had a stint in China on OMG2, they kicked him for Swift. And so Swift joined the team in, I think, like March of last year. And he was kind of supposed to usher in this like new golden age for Frost, where like everyone was kind of like, oh, Frost has all these pieces, and space was kind of singled out as the this is when like the term space prison kind of started coming into fashion. And in Champion Spring, Swift made a lot of noise, some of it good, some of it bad. He was kind of known for being really mechanically gifted, like very, very mechanically gifted, very aggressive, but he would always go in and die. Like he would overcommit and die. And that was kind of his issue. If he didn't have the rest of the team there, obviously his deaths were kind of in vain. They went into Champion Spring, and they made it into playoffs. They played against Samsung Blue, and they had a really strong first game. And then after that, they kind of fell apart. Blue managed to come back in a lot of like their mid and late games, even when CJ would get off to an early start. And so everyone was kind of looking at this team, and they were like, okay, well, Swift is figured.
Is that my cue? I guess that's my cue. Welcome, everybody.
Didn't do it backwards.
We didn't, yeah, 1, 2, start.
So where's the end point?
But this is not Into the Rift. Welcome, everybody. CLBC to China Talk. My name is Daniel C. Dragos. I'm obviously not Razzleplasm. Unfortunately, he is not available today, so I'm subbing in for him. And with me, I guess, as always for this show, I'm the newbie here, is going to be Michael Drexen-Laher, Emily Rand, and Kelsey Moser. And really happy to be here. Really excited to talk about China. Now, LPL, 24 games a week, kind of a foreign scene to me, but luckily I'm somewhat prepared. And the first team we're going to be talking about tonight, whose name I already forgot how to pronounce, so bear with me. Qiao Gu.
Yay!
You got it.
Yeah, you got it.
Gold star. Yes.
Qiao Gu. Okay, so my experience with Qiao Gu so far has been this. I'm watching Twitter for LPL tweets while I'm prepping for LJL casts, and I see Frost tweet out that, okay, IG, you're no longer my favorite. You're not aggressive enough. You're not doing like you're not enough for me anymore, because apparently Qiao Gu is nuts, going ham all the time, and apparently a large part of that is Swift. Now I don't know a whole lot about Swift, but Emily, I think you do. Enlighten me. Who is Swift?
Okay, so Swift started. I don't know if you kind of the running joke with the Zenix farm system. So Zenix always like scouts these players that are then poached by not really poached, but picked up by other teams. So he was on a
Kind
team
of like
with
Copenhagen Wolves.
a bit, yeah.
You gotta have farm teams.
I know, right?
Like a team to train them.
Yeah, so Zenix has been like that for a while, and this team had Coco, Arrow, and Peekaboo on it as well. And Swift was figured out. The team's finally clicking. Like, we're good to go. Champion Summer 2014 comes around. I don't know if anyone remembers, but guess which organization had neither team in playoffs? Oh, it was CJ. And CJ actually lost to, what happened was they were put in a group with Samsung White and SKTS, and they lost to I think, White. And that was what made the difference. They lost to White, and then they tied with S. And S had tied with White. So it was kind of this huge disappointment.
How could CJ be a good team if we're taught to believe that SK Telecom T1S was such garbage in this period?
Oh man,
Wow. Wow, Kelsey, wow.
Hold on, yeah,
That's
SKT1S
the perception. It's like, oh my gosh, SKT1S won champions, but then they were actually not that bad. I don't know.
Okay, so here's my theory on why people hate S.
They were boring. That's why.
Okay,
like,
not only were they boring, like Monty, love Monty to death. very good about staying non-biased on cast, but that guy hates Ziggs and hates the easy hoon passive playstyle more than anybody I know. And I think it's seeped in there towards the end of the season where they were winning with these like passive mid laners. So I think it's just kind of like that's the impression because they were good at what they did, but like you said, what they did was ridiculously boring. And...
yeah, not as interesting to watch. Anyway, so Swift's role in CJ, he was just again like really aggressive early. And for whatever reason, it never clicked. Like, he was seen as this, like, still, like, a very strong, very up-and-coming talent. Like, going into the next season, I think there was all the roster rumors about where he was going to end up, et cetera, and people thought he was going to stay in Korea. They were like, oh, man, Swift will be, like, on the top of junglers, right? And then, because of all the talent that they knew was leaving, but then he left as well, and ended up on Qiao Gu. And Kelsey, this is going to transition...
in Korea
this
is pretty much a dumpster. Yeah, I don't know.
Hey, Score. But anyway,
I'm sorry. If Score is like one of your best junglers and Ambition, I mean, that's okay.
Oh god. Okay. Well, okay. So
yeah.
here's
so here the basics is Swift is very talented, but he's known for being really aggressive. Like aggressive to the point where he goes in and he dies instead of helping out his lanes to snowball their advantage, and that was a lot of the problem that he had on CJ Entis.
Would you say that that's still a problem on Qiao Gu? And earlier you talked about him being this like clever, innovative as far as jungle pathing goes. Do you think he's retained those traits on Qiao Gu, or do you think those have kind of like fallen away and he's kind of changed his identity a little bit?
No, I mean, I think he still looks, like, really good. I was going to transition this into Kelsey talking about this. I know she has, like, a ton of LSPL stats on him, but that basically it's some similar. It's a bit similar where, like, any issues he does have with the team is because he overcommits and then dies. But he's still, like, very... like, the way I see Qiao Gu, I still don't see them as, like, a ridiculously I guess comprehensive isn't the right word, but like a really like super strategic team, right? But they are good at getting like kind of like the wombo combo team fights, and they have really strong laners, and they have Swift.
They like to pull the trigger. They're very good at pulling the trigger.
Yeah, Qiao Gu reminds me a lot of old OMG, really to be honest.
And the thing about Qiao Gu is that they'll like always go in, almost to the point where you can kind of think of them as a Starhorn Royal Club with that brings like more frontline and a better like approach to early game jungle pathing, because Swift is so creative in terms of where he wants to go in the early game and where he wants to gank, but he'll take like all of the kills. So we saw in Qiao Gu, he got 100 kills over the course of like 23 games, which doesn't sound that much, but he got more kills than both the top lane and the combined total of the mid laner kills. So he ended up getting like all of the kills on the top side of the map. TnT had most of the kills overall, TnT the AD carry. The other thing is that he actually had the most deaths of anyone on Qiao Gu. You know how Moore is TCT, and Moore has always been famous for dying a lot? He had 2 more deaths than Moore did. Moore had 74 deaths in 23 games, and Swift had 76. So that was... So you think about these numbers in the 23 games that they play, and they actually weren't even at the top of the kill and assist and KDA standings for LSPL, despite the fact that they did end up taking the entire league, and they won the entire league. And they only lost, I think, a total of 5 games of those 23. So it's interesting that was kind of their stat line, and that was their approach, is just always go in. And I actually think that, weirdly, the jungle meta, despite the fact that the tanky jungle meta, despite the fact that Swift likes to play these carries, like he's best known for his Kha'Zix probably in Korea,